What started as America's favorite sporting event turned into 7 unforgettable nights of terror. These aren't urban legends. These are the documented cases that will make you think twice about who you invite over for the big game. Watch until the end to see the most disturbing Super Bowl party that police still can't explain. I never thought my first Super Bowl as a cop would end with me staring down the barrel of a gun. Being new to the force meant I was working most weekends, but Captain Martinez invited the whole precinct to his place for the big game. Said it was tradition. I almost didn't go. Part of me wanted to catch up on paperwork instead. Stack of incident reports sitting on my desk kept nagging at my conscience. Sometimes I wish I hadn't gone, but then 4 people might be dead right now. The party started normal enough. Martinez's place was this gorgeous 2-story in the suburbs, the kind of house that screams 20 years on the force with overtime. The living room was packed with officers and their families, kids running around with mini footballs, leaving sticky fingerprints on the fancy leather couches, the smell of wings and nachos filling the air, mixing with the scent of fresh-cut flowers his wife Maria had arranged in crystal vases. Everyone was laughing at Martinez's stories about his glory days as a college quarterback, his hands moving through the air as he described some game-winning play from 20 years ago. That's when he showed up. I noticed him first, standing in the doorway like a shadow against the warm light inside. Something about his stance made my training kick in. 6 months on the force teaches you to read body language real quick. The way his eyes darted around the room, never settling. How his hand kept brushing against his jacket, right side, too rhythmic to be casual, the fine tremor in his fingers when he finally dropped them to his sides. I was reaching for my phone when he pulled out the gun. "Nobody move." His voice was steady, cold, too controlled, like he'd rehearsed this moment 1,000 times in his head. Martinez went pale, all the color draining from his face in an instant. "Tommy, what are you doing here?" The name clicked in my head like a hammer falling. Tommy Reynolds, Martinez's former teammate. Their photo was still on the wall behind me, younger versions of both men in their college jerseys, arms around each other's shoulders, bright futures ahead. Until that championship game, until that tackle that shattered Tommy's knee and his dreams. He'd blamed Martinez for calling that play for years. The rumors said he'd spiraled, drugs, depression, restraining orders, but seeing him here now with that gun, this was something else entirely. "Shut up, everyone on the ground, now!" My heart was pounding, but my mind went clear. Like that moment in training when everything else falls away and your instincts take over. 20 civilians, 3 kids under 10, no backup weapon. I'd left mine in my car like an idiot. Standard procedure for off-duty gatherings. 2 exits, main door blocked by Tommy, back door through the kitchen, maybe 15 feet away. Clear line of sight from Tommy's position. I caught Officer Chen's eye across the room. He was closer to the kitchen. Former SWAT. He gave me the smallest nod. We had active shooter training together last month. I knew what he was thinking, what he was planning. Tommy was ranting now, his words tumbling out faster and faster, about betrayal, about how Martinez ruined his life, about making him pay, about justice. But I wasn't listening to the words. I was watching his trigger finger, waiting for my chance. The moment came when little Amy Martinez started crying, that high-pitched wail of a scared 4-year-old piercing through Tommy's tirade. He turned, just for a second. That's all Chen needed. He tackled low as I went high. The gun went off so loud in that small room that my ears started ringing. But we had him down. No casualties. Just a bullet hole in Martinez's signed jersey collection, right through the glass frame. The whole thing lasted maybe 15 minutes, but I'll never forget that moment, when I realized how fast a normal day can turn deadly, how quickly laughter can turn to screams. Sometimes I still dream about it, about what could have happened if we'd been a second slower, if Tommy's aim had been better, if that bullet had gone a few inches to the left, where Maria was shielding Amy with her own body. But mostly, I think about how I finally understood what my training sergeant meant. He said being a cop isn't about the moments when everything goes right. It's about being ready for when everything goes wrong. I guess I was ready that day, but I haven't been to a Super Bowl party since. And every time I pass that photo in Martinez's office, the one of him and Tommy in their glory days, I see two different futures, the ones they dreamed of and the ones they got instead. God, I still get shivers telling this story. You know how they say sobriety gives you clarity? Well, sometimes that clarity shows you things you wish you hadn't seen, like that night at Sarah's Super Bowl party, 6 months clean, and honestly, just being there was hard enough. But then, well, let me start from the beginning. I got there early to help set up. Classic avoiding temptation strategy my sponsor taught me. Keep your hands busy, stay distracted. Whatever works, right? The house already smelled like beer and those sticky sweet mixed drinks when people started showing up. I was planted in my corner, death gripping my ginger ale like it was gonna save my life. Maybe it did, I don't know. That's when this guy walked in. Tall, dark jacket, kind of out of place, like he wasn't really there for the game. Something about him just felt wrong, like when you know someone's watching you, but you can't catch them doing it. He kept hanging around the kitchen, checking his phone, looking at the punch bowl. God, the punch bowl. I remember thinking maybe I was just being paranoid. That's what happens when you get sober. Your brain starts picking up on all these little details you used to be too drunk to notice. But I couldn't shake this feeling. Every time someone grabbed a drink, he'd get this look, just for a second, like he was waiting for something. The game was on, but honestly, I couldn't tell you what was happening. My eyes kept going back to him, back to the kitchen. Then halftime hit. Everyone was doing that thing where they argue about which commercial was better. You know how people get. I saw him slip away into the kitchen shed and I followed him. Don't ask me why, maybe it was instinct. Maybe it was just that my sober brain wouldn't let me ignore it anymore. The kitchen had that weird quiet you get when there's noise everywhere else. Like being underwater. And there he was by the punch bowl with this little glass vial. Clear liquid. My heart just stopped. Hey, I said it before I even knew I was going to speak. He spun around so fast he knocked over those red plastic cups. They went everywhere. Stay back. His voice was shaken, but there was something else in it. Something I recognized from my own rock bottom days. Pure desperation. You don't understand. They have to pay. All of them. His phone was right there on the counter, open to these texts about revenge, about making people suffer, about this party specifically. My hands were shaking, but somehow I kept it together. Actually, I said, I think I understand better than you think. And I told him about wanting to hurt people who hurt you, about that darkness that feels like it's eating you alive. I saw it hit him, that moment of recognition when someone really sees you, you know? They were all there, he whispered, that night. They watched him drink, let him drive, my family. He couldn't finish, but he didn't have to. I knew right then what kind of pain makes someone do something like this. We just stood there. The game was starting up again. You could hear people cheering, like the world was just going on, like nothing was happening in this kitchen. Then his shoulders just fell. The vial hit the floor. I kicked it away right as Sarah came running in. Guess she heard the cups fall. The cops came quietly. Most people at the party never even knew what happened. They found more vials in his car. Enough to, well, I try not to think about that part. The detective told me later about his family, wife, and kids, killed by a drunk driver leaving a Super Bowl party the year before. He'd spent months tracking down everyone who'd been there, who'd bought drinks, who'd watched that driver leave. This party, these people, they were his last targets. I saw him once more in court. He looked smaller somehow. But when he saw me, he nodded, just a little, like he got it, like we both understood something about staring into that darkness and making different choices. I tell this story sometimes, at meetings, not the whole thing, just about how being clear-headed that night mattered, how being present matters. Sometimes I think about how close I came to being him, how that line between victim and monster is so damn thin, how pain just spreads, like ripples in water, until it touches everyone. But mostly, I think about how not drinking that night didn't just keep me sober. It saved lives. And on my bad days, when I want to drink so bad I can taste it, I remember that kitchen, that moment, and I choose again to stay clear, to stay present, to look for that pain in other people's eyes, the kind I know too well, because sometimes the most important part of getting better. I never thought a Super Bowl party invitation would lead to the worst night of my life. Teaching high school football had been my dream job for 15 years, until last season. That's when everything changed. I still see Jake's face in my dreams, his determined expression as he pushed through practice that scorching September afternoon. I should have noticed the signs of heat exhaustion. I should have pulled him from the field, but I didn't. And now, every time I close my eyes, I see him collapsing on that field. The invitation came 3 months after I resigned. A text from a number I didn't recognize, asking me to join some other coaches for the big game. I probably should have said no, but the isolation was getting to me. Sitting alone in my apartment, replaying that day over and over, I needed to be around people again. The house was in a quiet suburb. Nice place, maybe too nice for a high school coach's salary. A woman I didn't recognize opened the door. She smiled, but something felt off about it. "You must be Coach Anderson. We've been waiting for you." The basement had been set up like a sports bar, big screen TV, team banners everywhere. 5 other people were already there, but I didn't recognize any of them. That's when I noticed the first strange detail. All the decorations were from last season, the season Jake died. "Let's play a game while we wait for kickoff," the woman suggested. She handed out cards with questions about football history. But at every question, every single one, was about players who had died during games or practice. My hand started shaking. I tried to leave, but the door was locked. "Just one more game, Katie," someone said behind me. I turned, and there was Jake's mother, her eyes blazing with a coldness I'd never seen before. A game about responsibility, about consequences. My heart pounded as I realized everyone in that room had lost someone on a football field. Lost them because a coach pushed too hard. Didn't see the warning signs. Just like me. The next hour was torture. They made us play Pin the Blame on the Coach, a twisted version of the children's party game. Each blindfold was printed with newspaper headlines about student-athlete deaths. Then came the trivia questions. What were the last words you said to your player before they died? Each coach had to answer, had to relive their moment of failure. I watched grown men break down, sobbing as they remembered. The woman, Jake's mother, she documented everything, recording our confessions with a cold, steady hand. When the actual game started playing on TV, that's when things got worse. Every commercial break meant a new party game. They called it Timeout Confessional, made us act out our players' final moments. Someone brought out jerseys. Each one belonged to a dead player, the numbers glowing accusingly under the basement's fluorescent lights. I kept checking my phone, trying to call for help. No signal. They had thought of everything. The halftime show was their grand finale. Jake's mother stood up, remote in hand, started playing footage from practice cameras. "Let's watch how each of you failed them." She had videos of all of us, every mistake, every ignored warning sign, every fatal decision. My segment was last. I watched myself on that huge screen, watched as I pushed Jake to keep running, saw the moment his stride changed, the subtle signs I missed. Someone behind me whispered, "Count how many times you could have saved him." I couldn't take it anymore, grabbed the remote, threw it at the screen. The shattering glass caused enough confusion. I ran for the stairs, found an emergency window, somehow got it open. The cold night air hit my lungs like a punch as I scrambled out. Ran until my legs gave out. Called 911 from a gas station payphone. When the police finally came, the house was empty, no evidence of what happened, not even the broken TV. They said the house had been vacant for months. Sometimes I think I imagined it all. But then I get those texts, always during football games. "Pop quiz, coach, how many warning signs did you miss?" Or photos, screen grabs from that practice video, each one showing a moment I could have saved Jake. Last week, I saw one of the other coaches from that night at a local game. Our eyes met across the bleachers. He looked away quickly, but I saw the same haunted look I see in my mirror every morning. We're both still playing their game, still serving our sentence, one cruel reminder at a time. I don't watch football anymore, don't go to parties, don't answer texts from numbers I don't know, but it doesn't matter. They made sure we'd never forget, made sure we pay for our mistakes forever. Every Super Bowl Sunday, I sit in the dark, waiting for their next invitation, knowing someday they'll finish what they started. After all, the game isn't over until the final whistle blows. I should have trusted my instincts that night. Working in cybersecurity makes you paranoid, it's part of the job. But sometimes, that paranoia keeps you alive. I was settling in for a quiet Super Bowl Sunday alone when I heard the familiar sounds of a party starting up next door at the Chen's place. They always hosted the best watch parties, and normally, I would have been right there with them. But something felt off that evening. I was standing at my kitchen window prepping a sad microwave dinner when I saw him. A tall man in a dark jacket I'd never seen before. He was lingering by their back gate and just watching. My first thought was maybe he's just another guest, but the way he moved, the way he kept checking his phone and glancing around, it triggered every red flag in my security training. I killed my kitchen lights and grabbed my laptop. Start running basic security sweeps of the neighborhood networks, looking for any unusual signals or devices. That's when I noticed it. 3 new devices had joined the Chen's Wi-Fi in the last hour, but there were at least 8 new people at their party. I moved to my upstairs office, the one with the clear view of their backyard. The man was gone now, but I caught glimpses of him through their windows, moving between groups, never quite joining conversations, always keeping near the exits. My hands were shaking as I dug deeper into the network traffic. The signals were encrypted, but the patterns. God, the patterns were exactly like the ones we'd been tracking at work. A series of sophisticated attacks targeting large gatherings, places where panic could spread fast. I had to do something, but I couldn't cause a scene. Not without proof, not with 30 people packed into that house. I sent a carefully worded text to Mrs. Chen, asked if she needed any extra chips or drinks, said I'd noticed some new faces. Her response made my blood run cold. "Just the usual crowd tonight, hun. No new people." I was calling 911 before I even finished reading. But I couldn't just sit there waiting, not with everyone in danger. My security feed showed 2 more devices connecting to the network. Different signatures, but the same pattern. There had to be more than one person involved. I pulled up the Chen Smart Home app. Mrs. Chen had given me emergency access months ago, just in case. Through their security cameras, I could see him now, standing near their basement door, typing something on his phone. Another figure moved through the kitchen. A woman this time, carrying a small black device that looked like a portable speaker. My heart was pounding so hard I could barely think. The response team was still 4 minutes out, according to my emergency alert. In 4 minutes, these people could trigger whatever they had planned. I had to slow them down, buy some time. I pulled up the Chen's network controls, started systematically blocking the suspicious devices, making it look like routine network issues. I could see the man getting frustrated, checking his phone again and again. The woman was speaking urgently into what looked like a comm device. Then, I heard sirens in the distance. The man's head snapped up, and I saw something change in his eyes. He reached for his backpack. I didn't hesitate. I triggered the Chen's sprinkler system, all zones. Full emergency blast. The chaos was instant. People running, screaming, water everywhere. But it kept everyone moving, away from the devices, away from whatever was in that backpack. The police response was brilliant. They caught the first man trying to slip out through the garage. The woman made it to a car down the street, but they had her within the hour. The investigation revealed it was exactly what we'd feared. Devices meant to hijack the house's smart systems, create a panic, test new methods of crowd manipulation, the kind of attack that could be replicated anywhere. The authorities found 5 more cells planning similar operations that night, all targeting Super Bowl parties, all waiting to strike at exactly the same time. I still do security consulting, still help people protect their homes and networks. But now, I pay more attention to the quiet ones, the watchers, the ones who know how to disappear into a crowd. Because I learned something that night. The most dangerous predators don't hunt in the shadows anymore. They hunt in the light, hiding behind screens and signals, waiting for their chance to turn our communities against themselves. Sometimes I lie awake at night, thinking about how close they came, how many other parties, other gatherings, might have people just like them, waiting, watching, ready to strike. And I wonder if my paranoia, the thing that saved us that night, will ever let me feel safe in a crowd again. I still think about what I saw during that Super Bowl broadcast. At night, when I can't sleep, I replay it in my mind over and over. I know what I saw was real. Back then, I was just starting my first real job as a junior reporter at the local news station. They invited me to the company Super Bowl party, my big chance to network with the senior staff. It should have been my breakthrough moment. Instead, it turned into a nightmare I can't escape. The party was at my editor's fancy Victorian house, with these beautiful bay windows and antique furniture everywhere. Everyone stood around drinking beer, swapping stories about their biggest career moments. I was trying so hard to fit in, to learn from these veterans I'd looked up to. But I kept getting distracted by the pregame coverage on this massive flat-screen TV mounted on the wall. That's when I noticed something in the background of a live shot outside the stadium. The camera swept across the parking lot, showing crowds of excited fans tailgating. But in the far corner, behind a row of cars, I caught something. A struggle. The camera kept panning, but I couldn't tear my eyes away. My blood ran cold when I saw the flash of metal, then that horrible spray of red. No one else even noticed. They were all laughing about some story from last year's game. Did anyone else just see that? My voice sounded weird, even to me. A few people glanced my way, then went right back to their drinks. See what? My editor looked at me with raised eyebrows. I pointed at the screen, but the shot had already changed. I think I just saw someone get stabbed in the parking lot. The room went quiet for a second, then someone laughed. First-year jitters, huh? My editor gave me this patronizing pat on the shoulder. You've been watching too many crime shows, kid. But I knew what I'd seen. With shaking hands, I pulled out my phone and tried to find a way to rewind the live stream. Nothing. I called stadium security. They put me on hold. The game was starting and everyone kept telling me to sit down, to stop making a scene. How could they just watch football like nothing happened? I went to the bathroom and called the police. The dispatcher had that tone in her voice, that sure honey kind of doubt that made my stomach sink. When I came back, someone had switched channels. They said there were technical difficulties with the main broadcast. My editor gave me this look, suggested maybe I should head home and get some rest. That's when my phone lit up with the news alert. Technical director found dead in stadium parking lot. Police investigating. I showed my editor. The whole room went dead silent. Through the walls, I could hear the TV in the next room. They were apologizing for technical issues, claiming a cable had been cut. But I knew better. Someone had killed the feed, killed that man, and now they knew I'd seen it happen. I drove home in a daze, gripping the steering wheel so tight my hands hurt. Every car in my rearview mirror looked suspicious. Every shadow made my heart jump. Work got weird after that. No one mentioned the party or the technical director. It was like it never happened. But things felt off. My computer would be running when I was sure I'd shut it down. Files on my desk weren't quite where I'd left them. My coffee cup would be slightly moved. I started taking pictures of my office before leaving each night. That's how I spotted it. In my window's reflection, a dark figure standing in the hallway, watching me. I pretended not to notice, packed up like everything was normal, but my heart was pounding so hard I could barely breathe. In the elevator, I checked my phone's camera. There they were again, following me. I took random turns driving home, trying to shake them. When I finally got to my apartment, I practically collapsed against the door, shaken. Then I saw the envelope on the floor. Someone had slipped it under my door while I was out. Inside was a single photograph, the technical director, moments before his death. On the back, in red ink, "You saw nothing." I went back to the police with everything. They took my statement, said they'd look into it, and the next day the detective on the case got transferred. All the evidence vanished. My editor called me into his office and told me they were downsizing. Just like that, I was done. I don't work in news anymore. Every Super Bowl, I watched the pregame coverage, searching for any clue about what really happened. Sometimes my phone rings late at night, no caller ID, just silence when I answer. I wonder if they're still out there, still watching. Last week, another envelope showed up. This time, the photo was of me asleep in my own bed. Same message. You saw nothing. But I did see something. I'm still here, still collecting evidence, because someday, someone else will see something too. When they do, I'll be ready. I'll have the truth, even if it kills me. I still check every window and door 3 times before bed. My friends say I'm being paranoid, that it's been 5 years and I should move on. But they weren't there that night. They don't know what it feels like when someone's inside your home. Just watching, just waiting. That kind of thing changes you forever. You start seeing danger everywhere, even in places that should feel safe, like right now. I'm at my brother's Super Bowl party with people I've known forever. But something feels wrong. There's this guy by the snack table. He keeps glancing my way when he thinks I'm not looking. At first I tried to ignore it, kept telling myself I was being stupid. Then I saw how he holds his drink, left-handed with his pinky curved out, exactly like the man who broke into my house that night. The police never found him. They said I got lucky, just a broken arm and some bruises. 20 minutes. That's all it took to destroy my sense of safety forever. I remember every single detail, the glass breaking downstairs, those heavy footsteps on the stairs, that smile when he found me in the closet. Now I'm watching this stranger across the room, and I can barely breathe. My hands won't stop shaking as I text my brother, "Who's the guy in the blue shirt near the chips?" I watch the seconds tick by. My brother's just standing there laughing at something on TV with his wife. Blue shirt guy starts walking toward the bathroom hallway. My phone buzzes. "That's Rick, Diane's new boyfriend. Just met him today. Why?" My mouth goes dry. Diane, my brother's neighbor who moved in last month, the one whose bedroom window looks right into mine. I try to stand, but my legs feel weak. Rick's coming back from the bathroom now. Our eyes meet and he smiles. That exact same smile. My brother's house is laid out just like mine was. Same upstairs hallway, same closet. I know because I helped them move in last year. Rick's walking toward me. My phone's in my hand, 911 ready to dial. He's getting closer, but this time is different. This time I'm not hiding in any closet. This time I'm ready. I grip my phone tight and walk right up to him. His smile slips for just a second. That's all I need to see. "Nice party," he says. His voice sends ice through my veins, the same voice that whispered, "Found you" 5 years ago. I force myself to smile back. "Can we talk outside?" I say it loud enough for others to hear. My brother looks over worried. I give him our old secret signal from when we were kids. He catches it right away. Rick hesitates. I can see him realizing this isn't going how he planned, but he can't say no without looking suspicious. We step out onto the back patio. The game's still blasting through the windows. People inside are cheering. "You've been watching me," I say. My voice comes out stronger than I feel. He tries to laugh it off. "Think you got me confused with someone else?" His hand moves toward his pocket. I remember the knife from that night, Seth. How it caught the light in the dark, but everything's different now. My brother appears in the doorway with 2 of his friends right behind him. Rick sees them too. His face changes, that friendly mask cracking apart. Now I'm the one smiling. "Police are already on their way. I knew who you were the moment you walked in. That's my neighbor's house you've been watching me from. Did you really think I wouldn't notice?" He comes at me fast and desperate. But I'm faster now. 5 years of training kicks in hard. He hits the ground before he knows what happened. My brother and his friends are on him in seconds. I hear sirens getting closer. Inside, the Super Bowl's still going. Out here, a different game just ended. People say trauma changes you, makes you see threats that aren't there. But sometimes seeing those threats is exactly what keeps you breathing. The police found his whole setup in Diane's spare bedroom. Turns out he'd been dating her for weeks just to get close to me. They found pictures, notes, maps of my daily routine. He'd been planning everything down to the smallest detail. Diane was devastated when she found out. Said he seemed so normal, so kind. That's the thing about monsters, though. They know how to wear human faces. The trial starts next month. My therapist says testifying will help bring closure. Maybe she's right, but I know part of me will always be that girl in the closet. The difference is now, I'm stronger, smarter. I took my fear and turned it into armor. Last week I started teaching self-defense classes at the community center. Every Saturday I work with other survivors. We learn together, grow stronger together. I still check my windows and doors 3 times before bed, but now I sleep with my bedroom door open because fear doesn't own me anymore. I do. I shouldn't have gone to that Super Bowl party. That's what I keep telling myself, even months later. I'm not the party type, never have been. But my roommate convinced me it would be good to get out of my shell and said I spent too much time alone with my books. I guess she was right about one thing. That night definitely changed me. Just not in the way anyone expected. The Beta Phi house was packed when we arrived, music thumping, TV screens everywhere showing the pregame coverage. The smell of pizza and beer filled the air, mixing with expensive perfume and aftershave. Everything seemed perfect, too perfect. My roommate disappeared into the crowd immediately, leaving me alone, like always. I stood in the corner, watching, always watching. That's what socially awkward people do best. The house itself felt wrong somehow. Despite the February chill outside, the air inside stayed exactly room temperature. No cold drafts, no hot spots near the kitchen, just perfect climate control, like a lab environment. And the crowd, something felt off from the start. They seemed too coordinated, too in sync, like extras in a movie scene. Their laughs came at exactly the right moments. Their movements were just a bit too synchronized. Even their casual gestures, the way they held their drinks or checked their phones, felt rehearsed. I tried to shake it off, told myself I was being paranoid. My therapist always says I overthink social situations, but then I noticed the first empty spot, right where this guy in a red jersey had been standing. One minute he was there cheering about something, the next gone. No one seemed to notice. The space where he stood filled seamlessly, like water flowing into a gap. I started counting heads obsessively after that. Another disappeared during a touchdown celebration, then two more during halftime. The crowd never thinned, somehow maintaining the same density. But faces I'd seen earlier just weren't there anymore. My heart started racing when I saw the pattern. They were taking people from the edges first, the quiet ones, the observers. Like me. I watched a girl step away from her friends to check her phone. She never came back. Her friends didn't even look for her. Their conversation continued without a pause, as if she'd never existed. The pizza and beer smells stayed constant too. No matter how much was consumed, the scent never faded or changed, like it was being pumped in through hidden vents. That's when I knew I had to get out. I made my way to the door, trying to look casual, trying not to draw attention. The crowd moved with me, subtle shifts that kept blocking my path. Their smiles never wavered, but their eyes were empty now, cold, like polished glass, reflecting everything but showing nothing inside. The TV screens flickered in perfect unison, game highlights creating patterns of light that made me dizzy. The music's bass line matched my heartbeat exactly, no matter how fast it raced. I finally reached the door, my hand on the knob. Someone touched my shoulder. "Leaving so soon?" The voice was perfect, too perfect, like it had been engineered in a lab. I ran, didn't stop until I reached my dorm. My roommate came back hours later with no memory of the party, said she'd been studying all night. Later, when I tried to tell campus security, they said there hadn't been any party at Beta Phi that night. The house had been empty for renovation, but I know what I saw. Sometimes I still see those people around campus, always smiling, always perfect, always watching. And sometimes, when I look closely at their faces, I see fragments of the ones who disappeared, like masks made from stolen pieces. A girl in my biology class has the same laugh as Phone Check Girl. A guy at the coffee shop has red jersey guy's exact smile. Little pieces of the missing, stitched together into new perfect faces. I've started noticing other things too. The way certain groups move in sync across the quad. How some conversations sound scripted, repeated at exact intervals. The perfect temperature maintenance in buildings that should be drafty. I don't go to parties anymore, and I've learned to trust that feeling when something seems too perfect. Because sometimes, the most terrifying things aren't the monsters that hide in shadows. They're the ones that hide in plain sight, wearing friendly faces and perfect smiles. The scariest part? My roommate's laugh has changed recently. It sounds engineered now. Perfect pitch, perfect timing. And sometimes, when she thinks I'm not looking, I catch her practicing expressions in the mirror. The same expression, over and over and over, perfectly.